Greetings everyone, it's day 6 and welcome to Changemakers20 Summit 2023. Now we have another session under the topic of, yeah, a warm and heartfelt welcome to the fireside conversation that promises to be a defining moment of the Changemakers20 Summit. The topic is breaking the silence, understanding mental trauma and fostering inclusion. We are truly honored and excited to have you here as we dwell into the profound exploration of the critical themes. In the world that often glorifies strength while sidelining vulnerability, this fireside conversation seeks to shatter the silence that surrounds mental trauma and to illuminate the path towards fostering a culture of true inclusion. Today, we came together to embark on a journey of learning, empathy, and transformation. It is a privilege to introduce two exceptional individuals who will guide us through this insightful conversation. First, we have the remarkable Ravneet Kaur, a voice that resonates with authenticity and advocacy. Her insight into mental health and her journey of resilience will undoubtedly leave an indelible mark on our hearts and minds. Joining us in the moderator in the accomplished Akanksha, a seasoned facilitator of conversations that matter. With her skills and empathy, she will steer this dialogue towards understanding growth and collective action. Together with Ravneet Kaur's personal experiences and Akanksha's guiding hand, we will explore the complexities of mental trauma and the significance of fostering inclusion in our societies. Through their words and your active engagement, we hope to build bridges of empathy, break down stigmas, and ignite a desire for positive change. Let us approach this fireside conversation with open hearts and minds, ready to listen, learn, and support each other. Together, we can dismantle barriers, encourage understanding, and create a world that embraces every individual's journey, no matter how challenging. Thank you for being a part of this important conversation. Let's break the silence and foster inclusion hand in hand. Before starting the conversation, I would now to give you a background of our speakers. So Navneet Kaur is a psychologist and trauma-informed psychotherapist with more than 7 years of experience in trauma-informed care for women and children. Ravneet Kaur is a proactive learner who can adapt to emerging trends and offers psychotherapy using holistic and integrative therapy online to individuals aged 7 to adults, young to middle aged. She is currently pursuing her post-graduation diploma in trauma-focused therapy at TIS Mumbai and has done her MPhil in child and adolescent psychology from Amity University. As a member of executive committee of MAP, Ravneet has conducted multiple workshops and training programs on rational emotional therapy, grief management, and single session therapy, and has been the coordinator for Youth MAP, Project Camp. Apart from being the founder of one online trauma informed therapy clinic, Nurture and Cherish, Ravneet is also working as a psychologist at the Child and Adolescent Guidance Service Center at NIPCCD. We have Akanksha, who will be moderating today's fireside conversation with Ravneet Kaur. Akanksha is currently pursuing her final year in MSc Psychology at Jain University's Bangalore. She is a state gold medalist in karate and has received the state Best Bharatanatyam Dancer Award. She has participated in many debates and essay writing representing her district Shimonga, participated in Federal Bank State Debate Competition organized by Federal Bank on the topic Speak for India, participated in many national level art competition representing the themes through unsaid stories in the form of paintings and received many recognition. We are blessed to have these two speakers over here. Now, I would like to request Akanksha, the moderator of today's fireside conversation, to hold the stage. Over to you.
I hope like everyone are aware of today's topic. The topic for today is the mental trauma on fostering inclusion. So before starting, let me ask you guys, like what comes to your mind when we think about this topic? What is the trauma according to you, and what do you know about that? Like if you have any queries, please put it in the chat box and we'll be having the discussion session at the end of the ma'am's talk. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am.
Everyone is welcomed, and I'm grateful for this platform that I can express my thoughts on this. So first, the structure of session would be I would present certain information in terms of PPT, and afterwards we can have interactive session. Any doubts, any thought you want to put forward, please use chat box. Feel free to use the chat box. So I'll start sharing my PPT. By then, when I'm using PPT, you can simultaneously drop questions in the chat box or maybe insights which will enhance the information on the platform. So today's topic is divided in different subsections which we need to understand before we directly go into the inclusion part of it. As you can see that we are going to cover mental trauma, marginalizing certain communities, population, and then how we can foster inclusion into our system. So this is basically covered through lens of our cultural setup in India. So I will start with term trauma. Trauma usually is used in context of war, and it's seen as something which is not in generally it's not in general that we get to see trauma in our normal life. But if you see today, you that perception is going to shift, because trauma is what comes along with every stage of our life. So here, if I have to explain trauma, trauma is basically any event that happens to you or any experience you go through which makes you feel helpless, powerless, and you feel the world is dangerous place to be in. So that can be coined as trauma. It can be emotional, psychological. There are different kinds of trauma. There are physical traumas and there are psychological traumas. Today we are going to talk about mental or psychological trauma in specific. So trauma is something kind of a wound or damage which is to our psychological aspect or emotional sphere of our personality. It's a result from different events, action of people, or maybe missing events which did not happen or should have happened and did not came into the place. So trauma is very different for every person. There's no standard definition we can put it into perspective. It's basically subjective internal experience. Anything, if a same event is experienced by two people, what will account to trauma is how the individual is responding to that. So it's actually internal subjective experience towards any event that's can be put across as a trauma. So it has different components. If a person feels that his capacity to cope with present stressor is not adequate, he feels trapped or overwhelmed or out of resources, that may account for trauma for that purpose. It can reflect in psychological and biological, neurological sphere of the body as well. When we are going through that event, and even after that event is passed for years, we can carry that pain into our system, and our neurons, our brain system, our biological body keeps the score. So it's not just a psychological aspect, but somewhere biological, neurological aspect of trauma also, which stays with us for long period of time. So it's the kind of reaction we give, how we cope with the stressor is what is important. So here you can see that trauma is not just limited to one event like flood or maybe earthquake or war, but it can be a continuum of events, small events, which can lead to very different experience, which is painful, damaging, inner experience, which is very subjective in nature. Effect stays for generation, and it's not just that you had experience and it's gonna stay with you. It's gonna transmit through your genes to the next generation. The epigenetics is a full area which is looking into how genes are modified once we pass through trauma. So it also kind of reflect anything that is happening now, which is not even that strong, but our reaction is very strong to that. That stems from our previous experience to trauma. So this is the different types of trauma, which broadly categorized. One is acute. Acute is single, as I mentioned, a war situation, or maybe a rape survivor can experience this, or single trauma can be floods. So it's just one event. The small t is actually ongoing events, which we are going to talk more, which is chronic in nature. And this is like if a child is born, he's not given the basic security, safety, and he is deprived of different things in life, lead to cumulative trauma, that is called small t, chronic trauma, which is ongoing in nature. And the third one is act of omission. That includes the things which a person is not first hand experiencing it. It's just that the person is observing that event, and it's happening with somebody else. Like if we see mob lynching, so the person is not beaten up, but he's experiencing the community turmoil and everything along with that. So that is act of omission, even though that person is not present in the main victim role, but then it's seen that its impact is still deepened. Other examples are intimate partner violence, and a child experiencing dysfunctional family where there are regular conflicts. So that constitute of act of omission. So now I'll shift to another topic, which is marginalizing of population. So basically, if we see the word marginalization, it explains itself a lot. That means if you see a textbook, so the margin sides are where these population lie in. If we see a society as a page and the side margins are where these population lie, that signifies that they are powerless. They don't have a say into the major role in community, and they feel isolated, sidelined kind of people. So that can be even enslaving people, colonization, systemic corruption, marginalization on the basis of identity. So there can be different ways of marginalization of different people. So we'll go deeper into it. So this is the broader framework which we can discuss in terms of basic needs. If you see, these are the basic needs of a human being. That is food, shelter, water, clothes, security, and dignity. So if a person or a community in specific, or maybe a certain tribe, or it can be certain religion, which is deprived of basic necessity, so they are not able to use the assets like social, physical, human, financial, political areas are not open for them, that those opportunities are not open to them, may lead to different kind of trauma, which can be collective in nature, which can be intergenerational, which can be historic in nature. So it's a very interplay kind of a thing, where a different section of society intersect and kind of bring different results. So here we are talking of most marginalized people. They are discriminated. They are excluded from different benefits which are generally provided and are fundamental rights of the human. So it can be that governance is somehow controlling and extorting and kind of weakening the political and systematic structure of that community, or maybe a group. So this is how we can understand how interlinked it is with society fabric. And trauma everything is correlated. So here, if we see, marginalization is basically inequality. The people are not equal. They certain have more privileges, other have less privileges. There is social justice. If something happens, the community does not feel that they are protected, they will get adjusted. So there are doubts regarding that. So there is kind of sense of insecurity, the unsafe feeling, not belonging to the community comes along with this. So obviously unequal power in the relationship is the, if majority is having more power, definitely they are gonna define policies according to them and not to the minority group, which can be of different various forms. So these are the groups I was talking about. These are migrants, refugees, women and girls, people in vulnerable locations such as mountains, or maybe somewhere where resources are very limited, deserts, hills, disabled people which are still struggling to function with different help, but they are not provided that. And then there is an elderly population, aged population, LGBT individuals, ethnic minorities. It can be different religions in a country. We can say that some specific religion is in majority, others are limited in number. So that impacts that lesser group more, because the policies are defined according to majority group. Then there are tribes and indigenous people. So if you see, this is given by United Nations, and they explain how there are different barriers in human development. And these are the groups which are most affected or are marginalized in nature. So if you see that inequality, lack of voice, so there's no representative of these groups clearly to put their points in front of the majority population. So there is an imbalance in the society. There is a discriminatory law. They don't consider certain sensitive issues of these groups in norms, and that leads to violence. Narrow self identities. This is very important, because this is where psychological, emotional area gets affected. So as you see that elite captures of an institution, like majority is having power over health sector, education sector, governance sector. So these are the different ways. A major problem, I guess, which people go through is promotion of linguistic diversity. So as we know that India is a diverse country with a lot of languages, and this framework is from Zimbabwe. They are working on different components and sub themes. You can read some of them, where they have kind of seen that the minority languages are not given that much importance. And identity, if your language is in crisis, definitely your identity is going to be in crisis, right? So policy making is one of the biggest challenge for minority groups. So next is how this whole system comes together. So before I get into this, I would try and understand, is there any question in the chat box, or we need to look into something? Now, this is something where marginalized communities or maybe areas people get affected, and how trauma comes into play. So individual trauma is something where your personal boundaries are violated. Then it's interpersonal trauma is where community gets involved, like sexual harassment, or maybe bullying, unbiased, unconscious biases against certain communities. So, and last is collective trauma, is when any community goes through migration, or there is a structure, like if we talk about women in general. So these, how women have fought for their rights. So that has a complete history to it, how there was oppression and how awareness was created, how they fought for their fundamental right to vote. So all of that comes in collective trauma, which a woman might be unconsciously carrying. So there's abuse of power, control. If policies are made on terms of political and economic level which don't consider these groups, so that also turns out to be trauma. So these are different ways there is interplay between these areas. So now this one is regarding, as we have understood that there are different kind of traumas and how that trauma is manifested and people adapt to it in psychological terms. This is very core in nature, but I guess this is what we can which can help us bring inclusion in place once we completely understand the problem. So here it is single and acute trauma, multiple recurrent trauma, toxic environment, childhood adverse effects. So if we are going, left side is the exposure part of it and right side is the explanation how it is manifested. You might be familiar with certain terms and you might not be familiar with certain terms. It's just for reference. So if a trauma happens, how its adaptation can be seen in historic trauma. So if there is historic trauma in a community or a group, we can say more of substance use, depression, anxiety. And if we come to intergenerational trauma, historic is basically one event happened in the history, and that's, that is affecting the present people. Intergenerational is one generation is gone, has passed through trauma, and its effect is given to the next generation. In neurobiology, epigenetics, in terms of that there are gene modifications, so that can lead to complex trauma, PTSD, which can manifest as unexplained symptoms. Then comes the poverty, where personality disorders are commonly seen, discrimination and oppression, which we can relate to women in specific. If we see asset survivors or the voice is suppressed, that you cannot openly express. So that's a disassociation that creates disassociation with your own self. Who you are as a person gets affected, right? So that's that you have a disconnection with your own present self, because there's so much out there, it's that you don't recognize who you are after a point. So next, the example which is close to my heart is division or partition of India, or Punjab in specific. So when there was a British India map, if you can see on the right side, you can see a bigger picture of Punjab was there. Once, so if we have to see what kind of a trauma or components were present in times when Britishers left. So it was colonization, enslaving the people. It was blocking the voice, representation of the people in particular. So all of this came together. So when the partition of Punjab was happening in 1947, so we could clearly see that there was very less, or maybe hardly any representation of Punjab in terms of when it was decided that it has to be divided in two states, two countries altogether. So representation was missing at that time. So that led to vast scale devastation and trauma, which is historic in nature, which is collective in nature, which is intergenerational. As you can see, 2.3 to 3.2 million people were displaced in this partition, which were the people were from the area of Punjab, included different ethnicity and religion, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, everybody was involved into it. So it was a sudden thing which was decided overnight, and it was announced, and people were left barehanded. Like you can see, they have nothing to survive on. So it was a very massive transition, and community is still carrying traces of this trauma. So you can see that women were raped. 75,000 to 1 lakh women was raped at this time. So you can imagine the coming generation, kids who are now descendant of these people, how they would be holding that in their bodies, how that psyche would have been affected. So it was like you are leaving your houses for bare, you don't have a shelter, you don't have a roof, food, or maybe a safe place to stay. As you can see, the way they came to both sides. They Muslims went that side, Sikh and Hindu came this side. So you can see the vast scale devastation that happened at that time. So now, after 75 and plus years, still members of the families are trying to reach out to each other and meet them. So these are the two examples. They have recently met after like 60, 70 years of their life. They tried, they were so passionate about finding their family members. So this is how it impacts the community. So these are the different components. This is just an example, there are different states which are going through such disturbance in terms of communities. So one of them is like partition time, I just explained, right? So other is 1984 Sikh genocide. Presently what pandemic is going on is drug abuse and land distribution, agrarian law, international laws regarding water, caste discrimination, economic disparity, immigration, migration from Punjab to outside India, environmental concern as green revolution came in and brought a lot of pesticide along with it. So the soil is affected. So see, once a event happens, how it just impacts full generations of that community. So this is basically at the time of partition. After that, how people are still struggling to maintain their life and have basic cohesiveness and sense of safety and belongingness to their life. The impacts which we can talk about is mental health, family dynamics, social interaction, cultural identity, and collective memory in terms. So these are the broad topics which these are the lens which through which we can see different events, historic events specifically. They are multifacets in nature, right? So again, this is how an individual is related to society, how it is related to bigger picture. So individual is affected at home and is also supported at home, and then there are exosystem which is friends, local government, teachers, media, and then there is a bigger picture which is nation, legal system, welfare policies, economic system, political system, cultural system. So this is how each component is equally important in terms of giving, in terms of having a fuller picture and fostering inclusion. So every level has to be included in this. We cannot just focus on social norms or cultural norms. Home is also important. Exosystem is also equally important. So here comes, we have to see this in the light of intersectionality, which is different mental health, how mental health is affected. What are the components which we have to see? Culture, personality, gender identity, appearance, gender expression, political affiliation, location, marital status, education, ethnicity, occupation, religion, class, culture. Everything comes together. So there are certain sub components also which we go through. So now this is something which is intersectionality. As we talked about trauma, we talked about marginalized communities. So everything comes to a point where you can see power comes and collides, where there is interlock and interconnection. It is not simple that one race has a problem, but it's more about different classes, different groups. It can be LGBT group, it can be gender problems, it can be different other things, right? So many other frameworks comes, but it specifies if we see through the civil right advocacy aspect, the power comes and collides with different layers of society, which result in trauma. So once you have been bitten by a snake, you are afraid even of a piece of rope. So this is what I guess we are heading towards, how all of this impacts the mental health. So I would try and understand if there are any questions.
Discussing at the end.
Ma'am, there is a question right now. You may
Yeah.
Ma'am, you can proceed further.
Or I should continue?
Yes.
Please let me know. Okay. I should go
Yes, ma'am,
ahead?
please go ahead.
Or are there any doubts or any thoughts on this, whatever I have shared?
Ma'am, we'll have this discussion part at the end of this session. You can cut.
Okay. So, okay. Yeah. So now, how these generational traumas, or maybe collective traumas, or historic traumas, or individual trauma comes into play. So there are certain manifestation in terms of how we relate to authority figures, people in power. So as you can see, if people are oppressed or are a country is a part of is a colony for a long period of time, as India was. So there was authoritarian rule. There was a mindset shift. There was a kind of imbibed fear of power. So that is what blocks us from going ahead, which can be manifested in different ways. Some people got the opportunity to overcome that. Some of the families were more privileged than the others, but it's somewhere still we are carrying this aspect of it. When it comes to cultural and ethnic identity, there is a lot of confusion in terms of merging all the communities together. So experiencing forced assimilation, cultural kind of erasing the cultural history of a community, or maybe strength areas of resources of those communities becomes a challenge and a struggle for identities, keeping clear identity. Somewhere once we go through trauma, there is survivor guilt or anxiety. So sometimes we don't even understand that we have floating anxiety, from where it is stemming. So if we sometimes go deeper into the family dynamics and generation from where that person is coming, we can locate that it's running down, trickling down through the family. So there is a component of guilt and shame. So once you are suppressed or oppressed to a level where you don't have a voice of yourself, you don't know who you are, so there comes a guilt and anxiety along with it. So as we talked about, that it also impacts families, how parents are trying to get basic survival needs for the kids, how it impacts their availability, their personal availability to the child is impacted, right? So this is how it works. So somewhere your if a family, as we take example of migration, if a family came barehanded to one side of the country, and they started the struggle all over again of getting basic things in life. So what you can see in the coming generation would be kind of hoarding things, securing things, not wasting. That guilt is going to be very prominent, and how husband wife relate to each other, how kids relate to parents, there is going to be cyclic pattern into it. So this is how it's reflects. So it can be like you have fears and phobias of natural disasters or warfares. Some people do have uh, irrational fear of warfare, natural disaster, which might be your descendant have gone through. So this is still science is still exploring this part in terms of epigenetics. So how a person relate to self and feels inferior. If you are oppressed, you are enslaved, you are not, you are marginalized in a section. Like women still struggle to find their self-worth, even though a modern Indian woman is earning, they still don't feel confident enough to stand up for themselves, or they have a sense of shame or inferiority in themselves. That's how intergenerational trauma plays. Then I have already explained the financial behavior, the hardship. One generation goes, the other kind of follows it through. Then there is trust issues and high standards. So over functioning is also seen in such individuals who go through trauma. Like in LGBTQ, if we see, they are trying to establish themselves, have a space of their own in the community, and they try to do everything at one go, which takes toll on them, because they have to justify their choice. They have to stand up to who they are. So that brings a lot of hardship for them, and somehow unconsciously they have high standards. There are perceived threats to identity. So stigmatization, certain, like if we talk about partition, at that time a narrative was thrown by British monarchy that people of Punjab and Pathan community are not worth it. They don't know anything. They are kind of people who are kind of fool's terms. So there was a narrative thrown, false narrative thrown to destroy structural aspect of that area. So they were not considered worthy to be in the mainstream. So that's how systematic trauma also plays. Like, it's a systematic planned way how we stigmatize some communities. Like LGBT is also still facing a lot of stigma. Rape survivors are facing, acid attack survivors are facing that. So they have constant feeling that their identity is not accepted. They have to defend themselves. They cannot relate to the common population. So emotional repression we have talked about. Then comes the spiritual religious beliefs. So in terms of somewhere when Britishers came in, I'll just give it from my understanding how Sikhs have faced this religious and spiritual belief system trauma. Is that Sikhs have two components. One is being a saint, other is being a warrior. So to have control over Punjab, British government somehow tried to sideline the warrior aspect of them. So it was just that, they are saints. They will just sit and meditate, and they will not defend themselves. They will not ask for their rights. That's how it has played for many years. So certain scriptures, for this matter, there's one example that when Maharaja Ranjit Singh was there, that time the literacy rate was 90% in Punjab, and when Britishers came in, they exchanged that Qaida, that book of Punjabi, which was basic alphabets and a basic literacy book, for 2 cents at that time. So anybody who gives gun was they used to give 1 cent, and if anybody is giving books to them, so basically destroying everything which empowers a society. So that's how a systemic oppression comes into play, which is very subtle in nature, and we can't understand that. So it's very important how complex and multifaceted it is before we get into the inclusion part of it. If we don't have understanding of the problem, what is the problem, we cannot go to solution of it. Next is trauma informed care. How, as an individual, we can create a sense of trust, how we can work with an individual who has gone through different traumas. It can be complex, it can be a single event trauma, it can be act of omission. So these are the components where we need to focus on. That's creating a sense of safety, trustworthiness, choice, giving them choice. They can choose, they feel they have control over it, right? Then there is calibration, empowerment. After they choose for themselves, they can calibrate with different people, which give a sense of belongingness. Then creating cultural sensitivity, trauma awareness, as we are using this platform for this. Avoid re-traumatizing, strength-based approach, flexibility, individualization, giving open options to them so they can decide, and it's their choice what they want to choose and what they don't want to choose, respecting whatever they're choosing, so they can be themselves. Like in terms of women, if we see, if now women have voices, they have their autonomy in hand. They, if they want to study, if they want to marry, if they want to have a baby, it's their choice. We are still working around that area of still creating awareness, still bringing in a lot of things for them. Emotional regulation, a person after trauma is highly dysregulated in terms of nervous system, biological system is disturbed. So we have to work through body based techniques such as somatic practices, EMDR, and different ways where we stimulate body to reach out to brain neurons and activate that. So the neural pathway which was developed by trauma is kind of replaced by something which is more resilient in nature. So more, as it's written, mind body connection, self-care provide self-care for providers, promotion, resilience, right? Now we are coming to inclusion part of the society. Inclusion part of the society, as we can see, yeah, just a second. So before I go ahead, so I just want to check in.
Yeah. Ravneet, there are a few questions. Yeah, so the Toshendra
Yeah.
Dwivedi is saying that can you please tell the immediate step and measures to take in case of emotional trauma? He's asking like if yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah, got that. So we have somehow covered most of it, right? So as he has mentioned in the next thing. So any other question I would take after I complete the inclusion part of it, right? So I'm going ahead with that. So first thing was more of in terms of individual, what can be done as an individual if somebody has gone through trauma. So what can be done? Now it's in terms of community or group or section of society which is marginalized, how we can work through collective society. So it is more inclusive in nature. So kind of creating awareness. Your community should know what are the challenges, what you're going through presently, what challenges are there, what threats are there, what other, where community wants to head, what are the needs of the community. Before we include somebody, we need to understand what is the problem, what are their needs, how they are different from other communities. We have to be culturally sensitive. We have to be very empathetic and listen and validate and respect the autonomy, and not just impose something which is designed for different group. Like if we talk about LGBT group, we cannot have same rules which is for heterogeneous relationship, right? So considering their challenges, their needs, their everything is very important. Creating different intervention and communication channels between the community, opening up different portals where bottle up emotion comes to the surface. There are different modalities in which we can do this. Feedback, evaluation, surveys. So before we get to policy making, we need to consider all of that. Creating safe space like talk rooms. The way we are using this platform is one of the safe space where we can put across different forms of trauma, offer trauma informed care, promote self-determination, use of inclusive language. We have to be very, very mindful when it comes to trauma, that trauma can be triggered through sensations, flashbacks, a word, or maybe certain appearances of somebody. So everything accounts a lot. So language is one part which we have to be like very mindful of. Like certain in Indian legislative also, there are certain words which legally are we are not supposed to use for Northeast people, for UP people. So we have to be that inclusive and understanding what impact that would have for that community. Addressing the power dynamics. So it can be like state and center government power dynamics. So if I talk in terms of in reference to Punjab, the state government has less power than the center. So that dynamics has to be shifted. That power has to be somewhere delegated. So the needs of that area, not just Punjab, but Jammu Kashmir, Northeast, whatever is happening, can be brought into balance if we consider the power is distributed in the ethnic groups, is distributed in the local community, and that's how they bring up something, what is their need, their requirement. Like if it's some policy is being made in terms of married women, so married women are considered before that policies are made. So it cannot be isolating certain sections of things, and that's the power play that comes into the being. So resilience again has to be worked through community. In terms of community, we can work through resilience in terms of going to the grassroots level of the community. Every community has certain set of challenges and strength and resources, certain stories, certain thought process which brings strength into the community. So that we have to go to the grassroots level and bring that to the forefront, in front of the community, that see, this is how this is who you are, this is how it can help you. So resilience in terms of community can be worked through this. So rising consciousness of an individual and community, that again is something comes through awareness, through education, through dwelling into divine inherents of that community. So if I talk about female, so she's nurturing in nature, she has certain gifts by birth. So we can dwell on that to bring a strong connect with within herself and community of the females, right? That creates sense of belongingness and finally leads to a network of support system. steps for inclusion marginal population. Again, these are, that was from a psychological viewpoint. This is from specifically from a legislative, constitutional, and legal viewpoint, where inclusion has to be with social justice. So we cannot include people whom we are not giving justice. If something is happening, a person or a community feels that their rights have been violated, fundamental rights have been violated. If social justice is not delivered, it has no meaning. It has no meaning at all. There's no inclusion in that aspect. So revisiting the components of inclusion in context of Indian setup relating to legal aspects. So social justice initiatives or maybe campaigns, awareness programs can help. Strategies for fostering inclusion. Okay, so building inclusive spaces. Again, a safe space can be in therapy with a person, or maybe a trusted person in community. Safe space can be groups where they can vent out. And building say inclusive spaces is somewhere you bring all the diversity into space with respect, autonomy, and freedom, which our constitution also says that every individual is different, has right to function in their own sphere until unless they violate other person's boundary. So that delicate dance has to be considered before we get into that. Celebrating success stories, like we still do. Certain people have achieved a lot after going through harsh. One thing which comes to mind, one example that comes to my mind is Milkha Singh, as his parents were killed in partition and he was way younger. Still, he had resilience, he had inner divine inherent traits, and system helped him to grow. He got that infrastructure, he got that courage, he got that motivation from the society, from his ecosystem, which led him to win medals for India. So those are the stories we can bring back to the community, which is still trying to hold on a basic ground. So by this, I'm gonna kind of end with the presentation. So this is very, very powerful. And this says the truth is you cannot love yourself unless you have been loved. So it's again community aspect. And are loved, still loved. You were loved, you are loved, then only you have the capacity to love somebody else. The capacity to love cannot be built in isolation. Yeah. So again, it's the ecosystem which we are working in. It's multi intersectionality aspect we are working with when it comes to trauma. So this is where we can bring balance. So I guess this is what is from my end. I would love to answer any questions if
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
there.
There is a question
Yeah.
from Anupama Kumari. She asked whether the trauma of a non-marginalized group is as similar as a marginalized one. If not, what are the best practices to help people going with that trauma?
Ma'am, you are on mute. Ma'am, you are on mute. If you can first unmute yourself.
So sorry. So sorry. Yeah. So again, in what I could understand from this question is, non-marginalized group also go through trauma, and how they are similar with marginalized one? If not, what's the best practice to help people going with that trauma? So last part of the question I cannot understand, but the first part I'll explain. The first part says that uh, definitely if you're in majority and you have not experienced in any generational, historic or collective trauma in general, you still are open to experiencing different kinds of trauma. It's gonna be different. So it's trauma is kind of layered process, right? So if you see a person who has a good ground, sense of safety, housing, basic needs are fulfilled, and still getting in contact with certain events or multiple events which lead to trauma, the person is more that person has more protective features, more protective anchors in life. When we talk about marginalized ones, they don't have even basic necessities in place. So if they come in contact with any of the trauma, it's they don't have anchors to support that. So it's multi-layered, generational multi-layered. Whereas it can be in terms of non-marginalized, it is to an individual and specific, right? So hope I am able to clear it. If it's still left, you can ask me again.
Hope that that is been answered very well. Next, moving on to the next question. One of the viewer has asked this question: what should one do for being resilient when someone is facing any kind of mental trauma?
Okay. So the first aid kind of thing, which just a second, I'll stop sharing this so it's convenient for us to see. Yeah. So yeah. If somebody is going through crisis or going through trauma and they are able to identify that my nervous system is overwhelmed, my capacity is to the brim, I cannot deal with this anymore, I feel suffocated, I feel kind of trapped, that trap feeling is there, that nothing is working out. So first step is, if you have support system, it can be in terms of friends, family, falling back on them, reaching out to your support system, figuring out what helps you ground. It can be listening music, it can be reaching out to nature, it can be different somatic practices like little gentle bodily movements. You can check that out, somatic practices online. Breathing is a very major thing which will bring shift instantly. So breathing and having a glass of water directly brings the hyper arousal state of nervous system to the set point. So if you're feeling that aroused and you're feeling that I'm losing out and I don't have any way out, and I might black out, I it's very suffocating in nature. So in that scenario, the crisis scenario, you may have panic attack, anxiety attack. In that scenario, just start sensing your body, where you are, in which room you are, what is the temperature. Try and give stimulation to your five senses. If you're giving stimulation to your five senses, it is gonna bring the sense of safety in your brain. So your brain is going to feel safe. It will lead to lower arousal level and homeostasis, a balance inside you, where you can start feeling your emotions and you start feeling in control. Drinking water is the one quick fix. Washing your face, giving different temperature, using different temperature water, like on your face, on your uh, cheeks, and on your wrist. Even smelling something which is very stringent and strong, like asafoetida, or maybe certain flower essence, something like that. So these are just a quick fix, okay, we are talking about. And then we have to go deeper into the areas through therapy, or maybe reaching out to whosoever is there with you, right? So This is it with
So
this
moving
question.
on to the next question. Uh, Ma'am, can you give us the quick tips when someone from any community, for example LGBTQ, is facing trauma and how to overcome from that? And as a professionalist, how can we help them?
Okay. Mhm. So see, when it comes to LGBT group, we have to be very sensitive in nature, right? If some, definitely they are going through major shifts in their life. First is that they are trying to bring their family on page, who they are, their identity is in crisis. So we have to understand that to overcome this it will take little longer time and consistent efforts, so they can reach out to professional help, because internal emotional regulation part is already overwhelmed, right? They are trying to take a decision for themselves and getting lot of opposition from other majority group. In that phase is we can reach out, they can join in bigger communities which are there for LGBTQ. There are different platforms which can help them, they can open up and share over there. There are NGOs who are working with them. So staying with same kind of people help us ground a lot. For them it's very necessary they have their circle which is sensitive in nature, which is open, is non-judgmental, they feel safe, secure in that. So this is how we have to work it through. I feel they are resilient enough to take a stand and come in the open area. So they have already taken one step ahead. It's just that they need little support system, little open safe space where they can vent out. Rest they are battling their own war altogether. Yeah.
I would like to thank you for your valuable information.
Yes,
So any other question?
yeah, I do have. I think there is a
Yeah.
question like if like Bhushan Patekar is asking if there is a traumatic person in front of me, what should be things I need to tell him or her so that they should feel better.
Okay. So if somebody is going through major mental health crisis or kind of losing themselves and they're in panic mode or they have a high anxiety, what can be done is uh, first of all make sure that they feel safe with you, or if they don't feel safe with you, who is their safe person? It can be their friend, it can be sibling, it can be grandmother, grandfather, it can be anybody around them. So we can bring that network to them, or just being present with them in the moment right now, that you know what, I am there for you, I can sense you going through a lot. Validating their pain, staying with them, holding space for them for a little time is gonna go long way. Later on, we can direct them to proper help. But listening to them without judgment, without advising them, is very important. Or maybe if a person is jittery, is kind of losing themselves, so if we can involve them in gentle body movements, that can be even just walking from one point to another point, or just walking on their toes. You know, this might sound, very kiddish, and that person might say, I'm crying and you're telling me to do that. But for that you have to have that rapport and kind of working through with the body. This helps. Walking on the toes give your nervous system stimulation. So if you are on a toes and you just drop your heels like this, you know so it gives impact to your nervous system. So these are some quick fix kind of things we can work through. Rest, going deeper, will always help. Yeah.
So how can we, there is this question, ma'am, how can we help them to realize as they want to be alone?
Can we tell them to socialize as they want to be alone? See, again, it is we have to understand from where it is stemming, why they want to be alone. Nobody wants to be alone. Humans are designed to stay in connection, right? They are designed, they are born with that need to connect with people. If some person is going beyond, is trying to hold on to that need, bottle that up and say that I am okay alone, that itself specify that they have certain underlying manifestation of trauma or maybe trust issues, that they feel nobody's safe enough. I cannot reach to people. I don't have words to explain. How do I explain myself? Right? So this is very important that we understand from where they're coming. What is their fear? What is their insecurity that is holding them back? So kind of gently exploring the need of staying alone. Why there is a need to stay alone? What this, if they stay alone, what do they feel? They might say ki I feel exhausted, in a social setup. I feel that I can't talk. I feel anxious around people. So that if we start working around that area, you will not have to tell them verbally go and socialize. They will themselves go. Right?
Akanksha, do you want to?
So
Yeah.
any other question?
I hope everyone are clear with their question.
Akanksha, do you want to ask something?
No, no, sir.
Ma'am. So it was indeed an
Yeah.
exciting conversation with
Yeah.
you. But I like there are few points that where I really want your focus is. Like, I have a question like that policy changes and advocacy efforts have the potential to drive systematic change in mental health support and inclusion. So according to you, that what will be the some key policy area that need attention to create a more inclusive and supportive mental health landscape?
Sure. Just a second. So, policy making, again, it will come down to the power play and more of assessing the need of the community, addressing their grievances, addressing their traumas. If I give the example of partition, in that respect, like my grandparents came from Rawalpindi, Pakistan. That was Punjab actually. So we came here. So that need assessment has to be there before we go to the policy making thing. So inclusion of that community is very important. Second thing is, uh, every community has very different need, right? So we have to address accordingly, and the budget allocation is very important. Even if we make policies, how it trickle down to the grassroots level, how it reaches out to the marginal communities, is the one thing we need to work on. The structural of the government, how those policies come down to the person who is supposed to take benefit from it. So that awareness program, that mediator has to be there.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving your insights over there as well. Um, yeah, I totally agree that there is need of some structure should be built for having a check mechanism, I would say, to ensure that policies are implemented on the ground as well. I have another question. I would say the last question for you. That that mental trauma can impact various aspects of an individual's life, maybe including their professional journey as well. So, how can our workplaces can ensure that they are inclusive and supportive of employees who may be dealing with some mental health challenges?
Yeah. So this will come along with again, there are companies who are trauma informed organizations as well. So change is coming in, even though in India it's coming a little slow, but outside India there are school setups and organizations who are trauma informed. So they have ambassador, mental health ambassador, which keep a check on diversity and their rights. Okay. And there can be support groups in the organization, like where they can come up together and express their needs, and that can be formulated on a paper, and that can be included by HR in the policy. So this has to be a step by step change. So sensitizing full organization and shifting the organizational cultural values, bringing
Correct, correct,
awareness.
correct. So, with this, I would like to end today's session. Thank you, Ravneet Kaur, for coming in this particular event. Now, I would like to extend my vote of thanks to you both. I wanted to extend my heartfelt gratitude for your exceptional contribution to the fireside conversation on breaking the silence, understanding mental trauma, and fostering inclusion at the Changemakers 20 Summit. Your presence elevated the discussion and left a lasting impact on who all attended. So, Ms. Ravneet Kaur, ma'am, your insight and your personal experience, especially shared during the session, were deeply moving and enlightening. And your courage in discussing mental health challenges and your journey towards healing resonating into our audience, inspiring a sense of empathy and understanding. And we also have you, ma'am Akanksha, and your skilled moderation guided the conversation seamlessly and allowing us to like for a meaningful exchange of ideas and perspectives, and your ability to stay the dialogue towards important insight ensured that the conversation remained focused and impactful. So together you both brought the light to the importance of breaking down barriers surrounding mental health and fostering a culture of inclusivity. Ravneet Kaur, ma'am, again, thanks for the beautiful presentation. We actually love the PPT and the facts shared on that. The stories from Punjab and the different therapy that you have discussed. So the various levels and levels of mental trauma and their counterparts. So your contribution have undoubtedly contributed to a more empathic and informed community, and we have immensely grateful for your dedication to this crucial topic. The fireside conversation was a true highlight of the Changemakers 20 Summit, sparkling introspection and inspiring positive action. Your willingness to engage in this dialogue is a true testament to your commitment of making a difference. And I cannot thank you enough for being a part of this transformative event. Thank you so much, both. Thank you, Ravneet Kaur, ma'am, and Akanksha.
Thank you for giving the option, and I could express my gratitude to the team and everybody who is involved. Every single individual who is involved is very important for me, because they have, put such hard work to bring a change into the society and world over. So thank you,
Thank
everybody
you. Thank you so
involved.
much, ma'am.
Thank you.